Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Producers Carolyn Carew and Judi Nwokedi will talk about their new documentary about the incredible careers of the members of Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Producers Carolyn Carew and Judi Nwokedi, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Hello.
Hello.
From Johannesburg, South Africa.
That's amazing. What a time difference.
In a heat wave.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm in a cold wave, although it's only about 50 now, but I'd rather be in hot than cold. Thank you for joining us, especially with the huge time difference. I'm going to start with you, Carolyn. Can you tell me about how you and Judi first met?
Well, that's an interesting one, because I always have a different year to the year she has, but nevertheless, I remember the evening distinctly. It was the 18th or the 21st of December. I think it was about 1993, and Judi had just returned from exile. She had been living in exile for about 10 years in Australia, Sydney, Australia. And she walked into a party, and she had this beautiful sort of sandy color cloth, a pair of pants on with this beautiful little boob tube. And so she sure made an impression as she walked in, and that's how I met her. And then subsequent to that, we all became friends. And then in 1999, Judi launched one of the biggest youth HIV programs in the world called Love Life, Talk About It. And I got to go to work with her from 2000 till 2000. And well, she left us halfway through. She went to work at the public broadcaster, but nevertheless, I worked with her at Love Life till about 2004. And then I formed Born Free Media. And then subsequent to that, we formed a partnership again in 2015, 2016.
Well, first of all, if you are right, I should have done this interview 2 weeks from now, because you guys are about to celebrate your 30th anniversary of knowing each other, if my math is right.
Oh, yeah, correct.
93 to 23. So, wow, that's a long time. So, Judi, how did you first become involved in filmmaking?
I was always conflicted between what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I'm still trying to answer that question. But I was very involved in the arts as a student, but was a very solid performer when it came to the sciences. So in the end, I ended up going to university for doing a pure science degree. And then when I went into exile, and we won't contest the dates because I know my dates and my lived reality. And when I went to Australia, they were busy setting up the New South Wales Film and Television School. And I became part of that movement in Australia, in New South Wales, in Sydney. But at the same time, while I was working, I would always get involved in artistic pursuits, like I danced as an extra in the Sydney Dance Company with Richard Werrett, who's now married to Kate Blanchett. And I also then did some Australia is very committed to lifelong learning, and they have amazing programs that you can do at night. So I went and did a film course and an acting course. And obviously, during the day, I had a pretty serious job. I was in charge of the redesign of the Australian Correctional Services program. It was at the height of the Bathurst riots. And they wanted someone who looked like an Aborigine or a Torres Strait Islander. We won't get into the politics of Australia and Canada when it comes to First Nation people. And they then hired me because I had this background, having grown up in a brutal apartheid state, and they felt the head of criminology, and it was the right decision, that I would be able to traverse the challenges of Aborigines, Torres Strait Islanders, Maoris, because of my own background. And they were right, because as soon as any of the First Nation people met me, they felt that maybe I was one of them, but as soon as they learned I was South African, they were interested in what the struggle was all about. And then I worked on the Royal Commission into Black Deaths in Custody. We investigated 100 deaths of predominantly young Aboriginal men who were all found dead and murdered in the period between the altercation and going to the police station. They died in police detention, not even having gone through the court system. And the findings of that commission led to the overturn of Australia's positioning as a terra nullius, a continent that was uninhabited when the British arrived. And the High Court in the UK and The Hague and Switzerland then ruled that Australia was an inhabited continent when the British arrived. And what was the question? That's how I then became involved with art, and art as a form of protest and art as a medium of expression. And when I came back to South Africa, I then started doing a course in film at the Newtown Film and Television School, and met Carolyn because she had set up, together with a Nigerian, the Newtown Film and Television School. And I started doing a film course part-time. Then I was heavily involved in the transition period in South Africa. And when I came to South Africa in 1992, in 1993, I had not intended remaining in South Africa. I was actually moving from Australia to New York. And in 1994, I got hired to run a democratization program for the big political parties, the ANC, and those parties who were going to contest the elections. And again, the role of media was critical to that initial program in South Africa, because the ANC and all the parties to the left were highly antagonistic to white media. And I then transitioned their view on how do we begin to work with the media to curate the narrative, and the rest is history. And I finished the course with Carolyn. I then ended up doing a European, what was that program that Gina Bonmariage ran? It was a brilliant program with the European broadcasters, and it was really around the producer-led filmmaking, where the producer is the person that runs a production. But in the middle of all of that, I got hired to go and re-engineer the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the public broadcasting side. And then the work that I was doing with Carolyn in using media, multimedia, to redefine adolescent sexuality and adolescent reproductive health on the eve of one of the worst disasters South Africa's ever experienced, and that was the decimation of our people as a result of HIV, and the then political establishment under the leadership of Thabo Mbeki failing to acknowledge that HIV was actually a transmittable disease. And we drove the program using media. We produced hundreds and hundreds of hours of world-class, award-winning material, documentaries, television series, multimedia. We worked with Channel O, Oxygen, Oprah Winfrey's channel, MTV, using media in redefining sexual identity and sexual reproductive health. And the intention was that you cannot hammer young people, adolescents, with do not have sex, you will get HIV. They need to know what it was all about, and it was about informed choice and allowing them and empowering them to make informed choices through the use of multimedia and visual media. It's a long attempt at answering your question.
Sure. Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is that I love both of your accents, but we lost you because I'm from New York, if you can tell from my accent. So you almost came to New York, but you ended up staying in South Africa. We were this close to having you, Judi. So too bad we missed that opportunity, but we have you now. So the other thing is that I've interviewed so many people, directors, actors, athletes, professional athletes, and so on. But it's interesting because people forget that you can use media for a lot more than just the entertainment factor. The fact that you say you can use media as a form of not just information, but as a form of protest is very powerful. So I love that part of your response. Carolyn, how about you? What made you decide to go into filmmaking?
Well, it was actually by default. I studied industrial sociology. I wanted to be an industrial psychologist, but at the time I went to University of Cape Town, they didn't have it. And they had industrial sociology, so I ended up doing industrial sociology as my major. And then when I finished my degree, I couldn't get a job, and then I ended up going and doing my postgrad in human resources management. And then I still couldn't get a job. And then I ended up becoming a social worker during the state of emergency at the height of apartheid in 1987 in an area called Elsie's River, which is sort of a 95% unemployment sub-economic area, mainly what we call a colored area in South Africa, in the Western Cape, with high levels of social issues. And I worked there for about 10 months. And after working there and going through a very traumatic experience of a young man that I worked very closely with. He had been unfortunately taken away for a week and sexually abused. And I tried to work with him to bring him back. And unfortunately, he committed suicide. And I was only 26 at the time. So I decided I can't do this. I just felt really disempowered. And I thought it was politicized, but the reality on the ground was a different story. And then I landed up by default getting a job on a film as a driver, and I landed up driving one of South Africa's top actors called John Carney. And that's how I started. And then from there, I went and I worked my way up to becoming a producer. And then, as Judi said, when Mandela was released, we got funding from Channel 4 in the UK to start the first film school for Black filmmakers. So I was involved in establishing the Newtown Film School, the Community Video School, the Newtown Film School. And then in 1995, I was asked to go and work at the SABC, the public broadcaster, to head up training there during also the democracy and the first sort of public broadcaster. So, and from there, I guess I've always just been a storyteller. At the time, I didn't realize. And it's what I've done now for 35 years, and something that I love doing. Most of the films we produce do deal with social issues or political issues. We've done big icons of, we've done a Mandela documentary. We've done Robert Sobukwe, who's the leader of the Pan-African Congress, who died in 1997. We've done, he was the leader that led the Sharpeville March in the 1960s. We did the first political drama that was 6 seasons, like The West Wing, based in South African Parliament, teaching South African what is the role of Parliament in a democracy. And we've produced huge youth programs around, like now we have a series about a young person who's accused of killing his parents, but in fact he was set up and he has to get sent to a delinquent school. So we do films that talk to the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day, but we dramatize them and make them accessible and make them work for the audience, the target audience. So like what Judi said, we did huge amount of content, Pan-African. We've produced across 150 broadcasters in 38 African countries. Also, we have over 500 million viewers a week. So we've done really important work that really talks to the youth. And as Judi said, over 25 million Africans died from the HIV crisis.
I love the fact that your work is really social in nature. But now let's talk about your newest project. Tell us about Music Is My Life, Joseph Shabalala, and Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Okay, Judi, you can go, and then I'll go after you.
So music is my life. When you're an artist, you always say there's nothing else I want to do other than art. And Joseph Shabalala, as a musician, he said to respect life, to respect music is to respect life. And to respect life, you can use music. And so we came, the three of us, myself, Carolyn, and our director, Mpumi, we all entered the story from very different vantage points. When I was living in Australia, I had the opportunity to work with a creative group called Bangara, the Bangara Dance Theatre, and the painting behind me is actually a scene from a traditional dance in Uhuru, which is in Central Australia, with Aborigines. And through Bangara, I then met some of the greatest artists like Stevie Wonder, Billy Joel, and Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And of course, as a South African, when you're living in exile, it is sort of a dream come true to meet the creative greats. And at that stage, they had taken the world by storm, and Australia went crazy about them. And people from all over the Southeast Asian countries were coming to Sydney to come to the concert. And it was a pivotal moment in my life, a very powerful moment in my life, meeting a group of singers who sang in Zulu, sang a traditional form of music, which is Iskatamia, and they came from rural KwaZulu-Natal. And then fast forward 30 odd years later, Carolyn, as the lead producer on the film, and me being one of the directors of Free Women Film, we throw about ideas as to which are the next sets of stories. What is our sleuth? What is our palette like in terms of an artist's palette or the slate? And and this particular story, a pivotal story, because it actually interweaves the story of South Africa and the story of the struggle, again using the idiom of music. And of course, what we wanted to do, which was critical, was not talk about Ladysmith Black Mambazo, whom everybody knows, but actually the man who is the genius behind Ladysmith Black Mambazo, and they're all his sons and his relatives, Joseph Shabalala. And so that is how I brought my own desires and my realization of having met such an unbelievable man. And when I say unbelievable, I've worked with the likes of Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, Bill Hawke in Australia, prime ministers from all over the world because of the work I've done around social justice. And I've even worked with Mandela. But Joseph's impact on me has probably been more profound than any of the names that I've mentioned, because of his gift to the world. And he used his value system and how he felt the world should be like and could be like, using music. And that is what made me fall in love with Joseph Shabalala and the way he lived his life. And what him and Mandela had in common, Mandela would always say, "I'm not a saint. And so forgive me for my imperfections." And Joseph always said, I'm not an extraordinary man. I'm no giant. I'm Joseph. And I believe in the power of music, the power of my people, the Zulu people. And there are many lessons in the film around what the message of Joseph today could not be at a more opportune time, around the only war worth fighting is the war for peace, underpinned by love. And that's what Joseph's all about. And that's how I became obsessed. Carolyn's probably more obsessed than me with making Joseph's film hit the screens. And we've had many, many challenges. We really thought South Africa would just give us money to make the film, to keep the memory of this giant alive. But maybe later on we can get into the challenges of making the film.
Right. Well,
and Joseph was just a man of extreme humanity, humanity and humility. And that's who he is and was.
Well, it's interesting because I am the associate producer of 2 documentaries, one on Tubi TV, one on Amazon Prime. And my next question, you read my mind. I always like to talk about the story behind the glory, not just funding, but all problems that arise and how difficult when you have to have this passion that you want to bring to the screen, as you said. So what difficulties did you experience with the huge task of bringing this documentary to life?
Carolyn can talk through that.
So, we started the project we approached Joseph in 2018. he at that point he had stopped singing. He wasn't in a very good way physically. He had an operation on his spine after when I don't know if you've ever seen them perform, but when he performs, they do a particular dance where they lift their legs and then and actually skatemia means tiptoeing. So during the apartheid period, the miners that went underground used to do this particular dance called tiptoeing on a Friday night to entertain themselves, because they were men that were, they were away from their wives for over a year and they lived in these hostels. So in the middle of Friday nights, they used to have these kind of dance competitions where they dress up and they look really beautiful, and it's all about how they look, and they would do this tiptoeing. And so anyway, he had seriously damaged his spine over the many years of performing. He performed for over 60 years. So when we met him, we had to the first hurdle was to get the trust of the family, because many people had tried to make the film, but many people had failed in making the film. And Joseph, a lot of people had also taken the glory, even though it was Joseph who was the person who was really who wrote the music. And I had seen a film, Under African Sky, that was about Paul Simon coming back to South Africa 25 years post Graceland, and was all about him. And I just felt very strongly that we needed to tell Joseph's story and his point of view, as opposed to it being told always from another point of view. And then we went, and so it took us about a year to develop the relationship and get the trust of the sons, who are all in the band. There's 6 of them in the band, the wife, and over that period of sort of 2018, they sort of said, okay, fine, we trust you, we believe that you'll do justice to Baba's story. And so we started to film. And then we, had to raise money, and we had a UK co-producer, and that came, with a lot of problems as well, because we couldn't always find the finance that we wanted to. They weren't able to raise the money they had anticipated they would raise. So we had to go and find additional funding ourselves. And then we were hit with COVID, which was really tough in 2020. And then Joseph died literally 2 weeks prior to COVID on the 11th of February, 2020, before we got locked down in March. And then we lost a number of key interviews. People passed away that were critical part of the story. And then we really had to, try to get the money. And we, as Judi said, we really struggled to raise all the finance. And the biggest challenge was the music rights. It was an enormous amount of money, because we wanted to really be able to tell the film. And unfortunately, Joseph didn't own all the music, even though we had anticipated he owned. And in the end, we used 30 songs, and we had to do a deal with one of the music companies, and we owe them a lot of money. Thank goodness they came to the table, whereas the other music company didn't. So it was tough. So we weren't able to finish the film and be able to put it out there because of those challenges of the rights. You got all the music rights, which, are huge, and for worldwide rights. So, so I think, but we because Joseph was so prolific. He was a man who left school at the age of 12. His father was murdered there on the ancestral land. They were forced to leave the land by the white farmers, even though it was their ancestral land. And he had to go and work from the age of 12. He went to work in Durban, which is part of the eastern part of South Africa. When Judi talks about KwaZulu-Natal and Zulu, it's where the Zulu nation comes from. And there he was so prolific. He recorded every day of his life on a little tapes, and he wrote, and he did video for 60 years. We had archive. We only used maybe a quarter of it, but we had the most unbelievable archive that we discovered during the making of the film that we didn't know it existed. And so through his own personal archiving of his life, we were able to tell his story. So we're very fortunate. And anyone who watches the film feels he's a man of such integrity, and when you just can't but feel his voice is so unbelievably ethereal that you just fall in love with him, and everybody cries from beginning to end. It's a very deeply spiritual film, and I mean, here's a man who's got a doctorate in music without a university education, who came from a small little rural community, but yet achieved what they've been nominated 13 times for a Grammy. They've won 5 Grammys. They're the most world-recognized world music group. And why did we struggle? I don't know. I mean, it's just amazing that we did. And in the end, we worked around the clock. We were sleeping on the floor while the editors were editing the archive, having to get the archive. So it was 5 years of just sheer passion and dedication and commitment to making sure that we could get
a little bit of madness.
Yeah, and madness.
Well, the fact that you had, it's his passion for music and your passion to tell his story, but to do that over 5 years, unfortunately, that happens in movie making and filmmaking a lot. But when you throw COVID into the mix, and the person who was the main featured musician in the documentary passes away, so many roadblocks, it really is a testament to your ability to have perseverance. So I think that's wonderful. I want to commend you for what you did and thank you for what you did. Let me quickly, before we sign off, I wanted to say to the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST. It's on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media. Life Stories with Marc Hoberman is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Carolyn Carew and Judi Nwokedi, I cannot thank you enough for what you did, bringing Music Is My Life to life. And thank you so much for being here today.
And just
thank you for having us.
Saying, it's South Africa's official submission to the 96 Academy Awards. And because it's a documentary, the Academy allowed us to be eligible in Best Documentary Feature as well. So we're in 2 categories. So let's hope we get in one of the 5.
That's good. We, of course, wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.